And we are live. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys are all doing well, staying safe, and taking all the necessary precautions that we should all be taking at this point in time. Welcome to another very interesting Daftarkhan fireside chat. Today we have with us Mr. Usman Javaid, who is the CEO and co-founder of this startup called Ricult. Now, Ricult, if you're not familiar with the startup or with the agri-tech space, specifically in Pakistan and pretty much all across, is a very, very interesting social enterprise that is working to basically help elevate smallholder farmers from the poverty cycle. And we'll be learning more about how exactly they're going about doing that across different regions in the world as the discussion goes on. But before we do that, let me introduce you to the man himself, Usman Javaid. So Usman is commonly known as UJ in the corporate sectors of Pakistan, where he's a bit of a legend, as I understand it. Usman is a telecom engineer from back in the day and holds two MBA degrees, the most recent one of which is from MIT, which is also where he happened to run into and form the team, the co-founding team that currently runs Ricult, and kind of came up with the idea and put that idea in motion pretty much all across the world. UJ has an experience, a corporate experience of more than a decade and a half, which spans all the top tier companies, the most significant top tier companies in the private sector in Pakistan, which includes Engro, it includes Nestle, and he was last cited in these corporate corridors at Telenor, where he was heading their marketing department as the director of marketing there. So, Usman, thank you so much for taking our time and for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Saad, for the kind words and the opportunity to talk to you and the other people.
It's an absolute honor. I don't want to make a mess of this because I know that you guys are doing some really profound stuff in the agri-tech space, pretty much all across in Pakistan, in Thailand, and other parts of the world as well. So can you, for those of us who aren't familiar with Ricult, could you tell us a little bit about what exactly you're doing, where you're doing it, and how you're going about it?
Yeah, so Ricult primarily is the middle syllable of agriculture. And if you take away the ag and the URE, we're left with Ricult. We're trying to create kind of a cult here. And basically, we can't exist without agriculture, both metaphorically and literally.
Yeah.
So Ricult primarily is a data analytics platform that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to force data from the agricultural value chain, process that data on our proprietary algorithms, and then generate actionable insights for the entire ag ecosystem. So putting it very simply, what we realized is that problems in agriculture across the developing world are very, very similar. And you could filter it down to two main issues. One is access to information, and the other is access to capital. And what in essence we are trying to do is to address both these pain points by using technology which is now available and which can be utilized for the social good of people.
Very interesting. Very cool. So, ये बताएं कि through all of your progression through the corporate sector, I know that in your different roles you've been very closely tuned in to the farmer one way or the other through either the customer that you were serving or through the value chain that was providing some of the raw material that your companies were then using. Lekin it seems like a bit of a shift. So you were in marketing, you were in sales, you were predominantly in the commercial side. Then you go to MIT. So, you go to a place like this, it's Boston, there's lots of crazy, edgy tech happening, some really cutting edge stuff. Why did you land in the agri-tech space? Like, why didn't you just decide to do AI for this or cloud services for that, which is so typically, something that typically, a person with international exposure, corporate experience is possibly attuned to, possibly more comfortable with, possibly more familiar with. Why did you go for such a radical shift and go back to working with quite literally the grassroots back here in Pakistan?
Yeah, so if you look at agriculture and if you look at the impact that agriculture has on our lives as human beings, and the level of advancement that has happened in agricultural practices over the years, you'll see that both of them are inversely proportional.
Mm-hmm.
Our contribution as the private sector and even the government sector, the public sector, in terms of trying to evolve practices and bring in efficiencies using technology has been fairly limited, very, very limited, to the extent that agriculture globally is considered to be the least digitized of all industries out of the 12 industries that were studied by McKinsey. And there's a reason for that. We take agriculture for granted. We take people who grow food for us for granted. And we know that we will have food on the table. What we don't realize is the impact that is taking place at the grassroots level, which is going to affect population overall. By 2050, our demand for food in this world is literally going to double. We're going to have a lot more people to feed. And if we don't take steps to bring in change at the very fundamental level, there are going to be huge famines in the world. And I have always taken interest in trying to solve very hard problems. And I think the combination of a sector which to me is completely untouched by technology and automation and impact that it has on our lives was a huge driving force to try and do something about this. I started off my career in agro, where I was selling fertilizers to dairy farmers, and I spent a lot of time in the south of Punjab, in the cotton belt, and in central Punjab. And I realized how difficult and uncomfortable the lives of these farmers are, who are completely dependent on informal middlemen, and they have an extremely exploitative relationship with these informal middlemen or loan sharks. And there's a huge power dynamic at work here, which is skewed in favor of these intermediaries. And this information asymmetry and then the lack of access to capital drives farmers into a perpetual cycle of poverty, because they become solely dependent on the handouts or loans of this informal lending. Exactly, lending supply. And what that does is that it pushes these people further and further into poverty. And if you look at some of the stats, 75% of the world's poor are farmers. this is not my statistic. This is a World Bank statistic, which actually shows that farmers are marginalized across the world. It's not just Pakistan or South Asia or Southeast Asia. And there are about 600 million farmholds globally, which would translate into about 2 billion farmers. And 83% of them are smallholder farmers. And they are concentrated in Asia, Africa, and South America. So you can realize the extent of the problem, and you can realize that the impact it's going to have on our lives as human beings. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a quote which I normally share a lot of times, that you might need a doctor or a lawyer or maybe the electrician once in a year, but you need a farmer 3 times a day. And without the farmer doing his work comfortably, there's no way we'll have food. And if you look at all these,
so I mean, in terms of the gravity of the situation, and even I think like the sheer size of the market, so to speak, that you guys are serving the farmer, both of that's absolutely unquestionable. Like, why is this a personal aim or mission for you? Like you mentioned you like solving very hard problems, and obviously this is something that you were kind of exposed to pretty much throughout your career in some shape or form. So, like, and why is that? Like, why did you want to solve the hardest problem that you could think of? When like there's a lot of things you're doing here that are extremely complex. आप एक ऐसे, like you said, एक ऐसे sector को digitize या automate करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, उनकी तरफ technology लाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, who are least digitized or least automated, or possibly one could even argue that maybe least savvy or least driven possibly to innovate, because there's no like वो culture of innovation उस तरह से already in that sector, and you're doing it in a market जहाँ पे people, you know, purchasing power is an issue. It's not a super lucrative market. You're right, the size of the market is big. लेकिन आपका, like, what is your motivation in all of this? Like, why do you want to solve this particular problem or the hardest problem?
I mean, couple of things here. First of all, I think it's an important problem to solve. And whenever you're deciding on what would you like to do for the rest of your life, I think what is important is what excites you the most. And what excites me the most is something which is difficult to solve, yet if solved, can create a huge impact. And I think that's the inspiration for all the founders on our team. The people on our team who actually left very high-paying, high-profile jobs to be with us or with Ricult, because they believe that this problem is important enough for them to let go of what they're doing and give it a shot. And I don't know if I'll be successful or not. I don't think that's important either. What's important is the effort you make, and in your best effort, how far can you reach so that someone else can pick up the work that you've done and take it forward. And every day when I wake up, I'm excited because I have a purpose, and that purpose is to help someone. And from that point of view, I think it's a good way to motivate yourself, and at the same time also try and create impact, which is so very important now in the times that we're living. I mean, just look at the impact that climate change is having on the farming community. Just in Pakistan this year, we've had huge impact of weather on yield because of untimely rains in May, which is unheard of. And the farmers are not prepared. So unless we all want to go hungry and we all want to be in a situation where there is no food, someone's actually got to stand up and try and address these concerns. And I really hope that other startups, other companies take this as an opportunity. It's such an important thing. I mean, no food, no life. It's as simple as that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so let's also look at the solution and, how you kind of came about solving the problem in this particular way. So like I was just going through some of the material around Recult, and, obviously you guys have won just so many awards and accolades that I considered listing them down शुरू में, लेकिन then I just assumed कि पूरा घंटा हमारा उसी में लग जाएगा. So I just had to kind of skip over that. Lekin there was one point where it was mentioned that you guys are trying to kind of develop this mobile app that would help lift rural farmers out of poverty, right? And now just playing, like, as much as I think admire the mission and admire honestly the work that you guys are doing, because like the impact that you're creating and the traction that you have, is the numbers speak for themselves. The idea or the approach doesn't need any justification whatsoever. Lekin just playing the devil's advocate for a second, like a mobile app to alleviate poverty sounds a little tech elitist, okay, like there's an app for everything, software is eating up the world type of a worldview. Is that really what you guys are doing? Do you feel like a mobile app or a platform that in that shape or form can really make such a significant real impact on the grassroots level and like across such a huge population across the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the mobile app is just one part of the entire ecosystem we're building.
Mm-hmm.
The ecosystem has many data sources because our job is to collect that data and analyze that data and then use that data to predict the future. And the mobile app is one part, or let's put it this way, getting information from the farmer either through an IVR or through an app is one angle. We use a lot of remote sensing, like satellite imagery, like weather analytics, which is another completely different part to the ecosystem. Then we work with a lot of stakeholders within the ecosystem. And that is the third part of sourcing data. So we work with a lot of different stakeholders like village middlemen, like artis, like bioparis, who actually are at the grassroots of what is happening on the ground with mills. So all of that combined together gives us the breadth of the data that we're looking for.
Interesting.
So the mobile app is just one part. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and another thing that also I think needs to be analyzed, and I'm sure you guys have done your research, and you were very closely, I'm sure, associated with that initiative as well. Especially in Pakistan, a lot of telcos have also attempted to do not exactly this, but like similar, stuff like providing agricultural extension insight to farmers and having this app with like marketplace information, pricing information. I think some data on weather was being pushed out as well at one point in time. Why did they fail? Like they have such a huge amount of data available to them already in the digital sense, and then they have, they're looking at this person as a customer, and then they're, looking at the technical data, the agricultural data as well. Why was that such a dare I say failure on their part?
I don't think I would categorize that as a failure at all. I think if you look at the Telenor model or the Telenor, I've forgotten the name of the app, some Kisan app, some Kisan service called 7272. You dial that number and you get an IVR call. I think it has almost 8 million users, and it has fantastic reach. If you look at Jazz, they're doing a fantastic job of providing the platform and access to farmers in many different ways. And you see, the problem is so big that the more people you have in this space, the faster the change will happen. And I think that telcos are doing a great job given their reach and the resources at their disposal to actually at least provide very basic level information. And what we're doing is building on top of that. So whereas the farmer also needs basic information, he also needs customized information, and he also needs information about the future. And that is where companies like us come in, where we build on top of what is already being happening.
Interesting.
So I don't think that it's a failure at all.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because like a lot of different initiatives have gone in, and you're right about the reach. But I mean, again, looking at it from a purely outside point of view, without really knowing the nitty-gritties of it, I think like at the end of the day, it's really going to be about the kind of real impact that's being created, and how exactly does one measure it. But also going back to something that you mentioned a little earlier about the whole farming community and agriculture in general being the least optimized, automated, modernized. Why is that? Is that a cultural thing across the board, and how do you guys tackle that? How do you tackle it?
I guess it has a lot to do with global mindset as well. Generally, we take food for granted. We know it's going to be there at the supermarket. We just need to go and buy it, and we don't pay a lot of attention to what is happening at the back end. The second thing is it's not a glamorous app which you can download and have millions of users and become very famous. It's a lot of grunt work, going out, spending time in the field in summer or winter, and more work here is understanding the pain points of the farmers rather than building the tech. And a lot of people don't find that very glamorous. So that is also one of the reasons why you don't have a lot of companies focusing on this as a problem. And the third thing is that I think maintaining the status quo in itself serves certain vested interests, and these interests serve a segment of the society. And we see that in Pakistan, we see that in most developing countries, where keeping the masses under control in a particular way helps people to maintain power. And that is also one of the big reasons why the industry has not evolved as much as it should have in the last 30, 40 years.
So basically feudalism.
Feudalism, power structure, power dynamic, maintaining control. I mean, if you look at history and you look at how the British were controlling the masses, there was a certain structure that was put in place. And if you look at where we are today, there isn't a lot of difference in the way things were happening maybe 200 years ago and the way things are happening now. And it's by design also. Let's not forget that.
Interesting. And do you feel like, and that's absolutely, I think like I agree, especially that case is especially true for the smallholder farmer. But do you even feel like the larger, the more prominent farmers, or I don't know, let's call them the elite of this particular system, the agricultural elite, do you feel like even they have significantly modernized in this part of the world? I know that obviously, like, there is a progressive community within our agricultural community as well, and they're extremely progressive. They have these consultants flying in from Amsterdam, Australia, and wherever. But do you feel like a lot of these others are also following suit? Because like every other sector, every other area is industry is is modernizing. There's machines coming in. There's optimization. There are value chain additions. There are infrastructural improvements, etc., etc. But and again, this is a purely outside point of view. So correct me if I'm wrong as well. Do you see that even on the top tier? Do you feel like there's a progressive push over there as well?
So the top tier actually is already quite progressive. They have very high yields. They know exactly how to make money. And I won't go into the details because it can become quite political. But in terms of using tech and using advanced information systems, I think Pakistan's high-end farmers would be comparable to any high-end farmers in the world. There are a lot of farms in Pakistan which are large farms, and they run as corporate entities, and they're doing fairly well. But it also depends on how you define progression. And I believe that the smallholder farmer is also very progressive. It's just that he doesn't have that access to resources, which would make him a more productive actor. And I mean, the advent of the mobile phone or the smartphone itself has changed the fundamentals of how farming is done. Even though smartphone penetration in the rural communities is still low, it's around 20 to 25%, but it's growing at a very fast and furious rate. And farmers who have smartphones access, and I'm talking about smallholder farmers, I'm not even talking about large farmers. Smartphone users access apps, weather apps, they access Google, they do research, they go on Facebook. In fact, some of the most vibrant Facebook groups in Pakistan are agriculture-related groups. And there are people who go there, who ask questions, who want to learn from each other's experience. So there's a huge misconception also about the rural community in Pakistan, or generally all over the world. And there's this huge bias that these people are completely illiterate. They have no idea of how to use technology, but you'll be very surprised. They have way, way better understanding of knowing what will work for them and what won't, because their livelihood depends on this. So I found these farmers to be some of the smartest minds and business people that you'll see anywhere. It's just that they don't have access to the resources that would make them more productive.
Right. Interesting. And that lack of access of resources, like you said, is kind of inbuilt. It has something to do with societal power structures as well. So effectively, that's what you're dealing with, right? Because again, like, the Ricult platform alone is not going to come in and solve all of your access to capital issues and all of your access to market issues. You would need other players to kind of participate and come in. Do you guys feel like the mobile disruption, or this whole mobile revolution, if you want to call it, is making a significant enough dent that it's overturning or diminishing these power structures or these power ambitions as well?
The mobile phone alone cannot make any change. It's a means to an end. It's not the end itself. And what I normally tell people is that technology is not the answer to problems. How you embed technology in a solution to address the problem is the real deal. And if I were to put it in simpler terms, yes, the mobile phone makes it easier to break down these barriers. If you had no mobile phone, I don't think this would have been possible.
Sure.
But the fact that you have smartphones, you have access to information, now with the advent of digital finance, you have access to capital, and all of that makes it far easier if you embed these things in your solution than it would have been maybe 10 years ago.
Interesting. So let's talk about your the transitioning again from the corporate to a BOP startup life. How was that, and how did you manage the transition? I mean, you spend 10, 15 years, you get accustomed to a certain lifestyle, a certain way of living. You're based in Islamabad. It's all great, right? The startup paradigm is a significant shift away from that, and then running a startup that's a social enterprise that has a double bottom line, and you are thinking about all of these different issues, and then you, to top it all off, as if you had been given a dare by someone, were running this startup across 3 different time zones, as I understand it, from day one. So what was that transition like, and how did you manage it, and would you recommend it to anyone?
So I normally tell people that startup life is, sorry, what did I do?
Don't worry about it. I think you might have switched off your camera. All right, apparently internet issues, but I think we should have him back on again pretty soon. All right.
Hello?
Yes, we're back.
Yep, my apologies.
No worries.
Yep. Okay, yeah, so I was saying that I normally tell people that startup life is like a roller coaster of emotions. One day you're on top of the world, and the next day you feel as if you would have been better off dead. So so it all depends on what basically drives you. I've loved unpredictability in a certain way. It's a weird thing to say, but trying to make sense of chaos is something that really turns me on. And again, I think I was talking to you the other day that it all boils down to what makes you happy. And for some people, happiness is in a structured environment, in an ordered environment. There's some people who relish the opportunity of being in an environment where there's complete chaos. So if you are that personality type, which has a very high sense of adventure and risk taking, and you enjoy going on difficult journeys, then startup life is for you. If you love roller coaster rides, you'll enjoy being an entrepreneur. If you don't, you'll be very nauseous and you'd want to get off as soon as possible. So this is I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. It all boils down to, at the end of the day, how does this fit into your life ambitions? And I normally tell people that the clearer you are with how you want to live your life, the easier it will be to take such decisions. A lot of times people are not clear and they're confused and they want the best of all the worlds. And that rarely happens. If you really believe in something and you believe in the fact that this is something that makes you happen and you really want it real bad, then as they say, the universe will conspire to actually make that happen for you. And even though I've made much less in terms of financial returns than I could have made if I had stayed on in the corporate sector.
Sure.
But I believe that I am way happier than I would have been there because I've had adventure of a lifetime, and I would never go back and trade it for anything. I think what I've learned in the last 5 years, the kind of resources I have had access to, the kind of people I've met on the way. I mean, how many people can claim to have met Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg in their journey, or had the opportunity to meet people in the UN or be at the UN Security Council trying to present your views. And these are opportunities which I would definitely trade my corporate life for. So honestly speaking, there's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on what people want from their life. I really wanted a life where I could give back to the society. I could literally try and change the world and make an impact which would alleviate people from a distressful situation. And I am extremely happy. I mean, there are 150,000 farmers who are benefiting from our services. About 1,000 farmers a day are joining our platform. So there's nothing more motivating than waking up every morning and knowing that you've changed a life.
Very cool. But so it sounds like you don't have any low points. Is that right?
No, I do have my low points as well. As I mentioned, it's a roller coaster. There are times when you're in a situation where things did not go as planned. When you're in a situation where certain deals that you were expecting don't happen, where you believe that maybe if you had gone in a certain direction, things would have been different. So you have all these things, but I think that's the beauty of this thing, that the lower you go, any thing that takes you upwards gives you that satisfaction.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. If you're clear on the fundamentals of why is it that you're doing what you're doing, and what the company is all about and what you're all about, I think that really helps. And I think like we also saw this in our own case, and in the case of a lot of friends that are running their own entrepreneurial ventures as well, that this particular situation that we're in, this pandemic, and how it's been kind of impacting different businesses. I think the people who've been clear about, okay, here's the mission that we're here to serve, or here's the purpose for us personally or for this company, have been doing some really interesting things and kind of capitalizing this time and leveraging it as an opportunity rather than just a crisis, as opposed to people who were just in it for, this looks lucrative, why don't we make a quick buck here and a quick buck there. So I think you're absolutely right. But was there any, so you talked about the 150,000 farmers that you guys are serving. What's the split between Thailand and Pakistan in that, and was there a strategic reason as well that you guys are operating in two different places and you're headquartered back in Boston, or is that just how MIT intended it?
Yeah, so the reason why we set up the headquarters in Boston is because my entire network in the US was built around MIT. And then since all the founders were from MIT, it made a lot of sense to stay close to MIT. And a couple of people on our board of advisors are also from MIT, which we interact with. So keeping that connection alive, I think, was extremely important. Boston, again, is a great ecosystem for startups as well. And it provides you access to a lot of resources, which you don't get in a lot of other cities. So from that point of view, it was great. Then the reason why we went to Thailand and to Pakistan is, first of all, being a US entity, we were targeting US investors. And unfortunately, Pakistan does not have the kind of image where you could get US investors to just invest in a market like Pakistan. So having an additional market which gives investors the peace of mind that it's a bigger market, it gives access to Southeast Asia, it's growing faster, helped us a lot. The second thing is my co-founder also is from Thailand. He's a Thai American, and he comes from a family of farmers. And he also had the same, more or less the same vision that I had. And in fact, we met in one of the entrepreneurial classes that I was taking. It was an entrepreneurship class on developing countries, and he pitched something, I pitched something which was very similar. And then after the class, we just met up and said that why don't we join hands? So that's how we got into Thailand and Pakistan both.
Very cool, very cool. And clearly it seems to be working out. But for those of us who are slightly newer to this whole managing large teams which are distributed, how do you guys manage it? Like even the time zones are so radically different. Do you have frameworks in place, or there's one co-founder in every region that is managing the team? Is the Boston office also significant, or is that just the registered entity and where
no, we have
a couple of people are, or you travel to?
We have about 7-8 people there.
Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is that very earlier on we started investing in tools, and nowadays you get a lot of tools which help you in addressing a lot of issues. I mean, way before people started moving to Zoom, we were using Google Hangouts extensively. Then we actually were able to fix a routine where all of us would be available at a particular point in time during the day. So that makes it easier because we know that in these 4 hours, everyone's available. And honestly speaking, even before this COVID thing happens, we were working from home in a lot of places. To me, working from office is such an outdated thing in this time and age. That we never felt the need to actually be physically present in the same space.
Location. Yeah.
It's so much easier now than it was 5 years ago. So honestly, it's a mindset thing. Even now, people are working from home. Before this, also people had the option of working from home. Our entire tech team works from home. They're all over the world. We have some people in Pakistan, we have some people in the US, but they've never had an issue in communicating because now you have tools available which can just allow you to share files, to work on the same files remotely, to see each other if they want to through a video, or talk whenever they want, as long as they know when they're available. So one key suggestion I like to give people who ask me that, how did you guys manage, is that you need a little bit of discipline in your team. You need to make sure that people, if they say they're going to be available during this time, then they are actually available. Because if you miss that window, then you'll have to wait for the next available window. And once people get disciplined and they understand that this is important, it's pretty straightforward.
Right. The rest of it is business as usual.
Yeah.
Very interesting. We have some really cool questions coming in as well. So we have to get to those as soon as possible. But before that, one last one from me. What's the future like? Is the legacy thing for you personally all sorted out? Are you happy with it? And where is Ricult going, and what's the future like for you, Jay?
Yeah, so as one of our most famous politicians said, "Abhi to party shuru hui hai." So there's so much to do. Every single day that we get to work, we realize that there's so much more that can be done, and I think we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg. It's an immensely large market. There are millions and millions of people who can benefit from what we're doing. So honestly speaking, when I talk about the future, we have ambitions to be a global company, and we have ambitions to roll out in multiple markets in the next 5 to 7 years. We already get a lot of requests from a lot of different countries to come and launch there. So our ambitions are global. We would definitely strive and reach our goals. We also have certain responsibilities towards our investors who've been so kind enough to help us when we really needed them. So I guess the future,
by the way,
to me,
so just along those same lines, what is the hang up? So for example, like, you guys have been around for 4 years now, and it clearly seems like you've iterated the model across 2 different regions as well. You've tested it out, and clearly there is traction. So the product market fit thing is all sorted out, and it's very cool for startups to blitz scale, so to speak. Thank you, Reid Hoffman. So why aren't you blitzing all over the place right now?
So we still feel that there is a lot that needs to be done in both Pakistan and Thailand. There are about 15 to 20 million farmers in Pakistan. There are about 8 million farmers in Thailand. And we are still a very, very small percentage of the market size that exists in both these markets. So I believe that there is still a lot of scaling up that needs to be done here. And we are entering some very interesting partnerships with some very large organizations in the next few weeks, which is going to give us a huge boost in terms of scaling up and implementing some very cool fintech stuff. So so I believe that probably next year we'll be ready to go into another market. We already have requests from one of our large clients in Thailand, who also has factories all over Southeast Asia, and they want us to launch with them in those markets as well. So we don't want to do it in an unorderly fashion. We want to make sure that we have enough scale that when we go there, we don't face any other problems.
Sure, makes sense. And in the next 10, 20 years, the agricultural sector and food security, should we be hopeful, or should we just focus on terraforming Mars?
Well, my personal preference would be that we terraform Mars.
Okay.
But
but
we can't take everyone to Mars. So I don't know if you've heard of Thomas Malthus, but he actually, I think at the start of the 19th century, he responded to someone's query that there isn't going to be enough food in the next 50 years. And he made the statement that if food demand grows by, if you could represent food demand as an arithmetic progression, food supply is going to be a geometric progression or a geometric increase. So it's going to be exponentially higher compared to the food demand. With the advent of new technology, and you had all these new seed varieties coming in, and you had all these cool tractors coming in, and all that kind of stuff. So I am hopeful that the technology is available, and it's just a question of putting our minds together and making sure that we implement these technologies in a way that we can enhance food productivity.
Fantastic.
So I'm quite keen to answer your
Zabardast. Fantastic. So now, before we jump into the questions, let me first off, just thank you for a very, very interesting conversation. But even more than that, I think for taking up the work that you guys are doing. You're absolutely right. It is extremely, extremely significant and very, very valuable. I think not just to the markets that you guys are serving right now, but to the world in general. So thank you for doing what you're doing. If all of you guys who have tuned in, who are watching this now, later, in the future, in the past, or whatever, if you'd like to follow more conversations, we keep hosting different inspiring individuals like you, Jay, and many others. And we do this on a regular basis. So just follow us on social media, just stay tuned. Once again, Jay, thank you so much for your time.